All right, welcome back. So this entire section is all about the command line, also known as the terminal. It's not the most glamorous thing ever, but it's really, really important for the rest of this course. And I'll be really upfront, we're not covering any Python in this section, which I know might be a little bit of a bummer, but it's for a really good reason. We have to have a solid understanding, a mastery of the basics of using the command line in order to move forward with Python. In fact, we'll be using the command line in pretty much every single video from here on out. So we got to start here, but we'll keep it quick, keep it to the basics, just the minimum you need to know in order to work with Python. Oh, I should mention, I did add a couple videos and photos of my two adorable cats somewhere in this section. So I don't know, maybe that will help you get excited about it if you're not excited. Okay, so let's start by talking about our objectives. In this section, there's a couple key things that we want to take away to prepare us for working with Python. And the first is we got to define what the command line is. Pretty straightforward. What is it and why should you care? Then we're going to learn the basics of command line navigation and file structure. Along with that, we'll learn how to manipulate files and folders using the command line. So we'll be able to look at folders and files, create new ones, delete existing ones, move them around, that sort of thing. So those are the three key points that we want to take away from this section. Like I said, I'm going to keep it brief. If you already feel comfortable doing these three tasks, really the latter two, if you're good navigating your file structure, creating, deleting, moving files and folders around, then you might be able to just skip this section entirely and move on to Python. But if you're not confident in your ability to do that, hang in there. This will be quick. And like I said, there's cute photos of my cats. So let's get started. So what is the command line? What's it do? To put it shortly, or not so shortly in this case, the command line is a faster and more powerful way to maneuver your operating system. So if you're on a Mac, you might be familiar with the Mac Finder, or on Windows, the Windows Explorer. These are graphical user interfaces. So if you've never used the command line, this is how you interact with your computer. You use your mouse. We can open up files. You can click on things, you can delete by dragging to the trash or right-clicking, depending on the system that you're on. This is how the majority of people interact with their computer, and it works great, but the command line works better. It's a little uglier. That's probably the hardest roadblock to get past. It's just text, but it's faster and far more powerful once you kind of get up and running with it. So rather than using our mouse to click on things and double-click and drag items, we use special keywords, just text. So these special keywords that we're going to learn let you do everything you can do with the graphical user interface, plus a lot more. So here's a quick example. Here's a command, and it's pretty trivial, silly example, but what it will do is search in a file called report.txt, so an existing file, and let's say this file is filled with, 10,000 lines of text. This sed command is going to then search this file for all instances of the word dude, and it's going to replace it with my name, Colt. But it's going to take the result of that, with all the replaced dudes, into a new file it's going to make called report_new.txt. So again, we're going through a file, report.txt, replacing all instances of the word dude with Colt, and storing that all in a new file called report_new.txt in a single line. And while this is something you probably don't need to do often, if you had to do this with the GUI or GUI, it takes a lot of work. At best, you would need to open up the report file. Maybe your text editor has a way to find and replace. So even if you find and replace using your editor rather than doing it manually, you then still have to save the result, copy it, make a new file, open that in a new application, paste the new code in there, save it as report_new.txt, and it takes a lot of time. And again, that's just one silly example, but pretty much everything that we do is going to be faster using the command line. So that brings us to the next thing, which is how are we going to use it in this course? And really, why do we need to even talk about it? How does it relate to Python? Well, first off, we're going to use the terminal to just navigate around our files. So we'll have around 100 or more files, maybe 20 different directories for this course, and we'll use the command line, the terminal, to navigate through them, to create and remove new folders and files, to move, copy, and paste those files, and most importantly, as far as how it relates to Python, we need to use the command line to actually run code as Python. So we're going to write code in files, let's say a file called mycode.python or .py. Just putting code in a file doesn't really do anything. we have to execute it using Python. So we need to be able to navigate through our folders, find the correct file, and then execute Python with that file.